As it turns out, I was going to be in France halfway through the Nollywood Week Film Festival. If you don't know, Nollywood Week is an African focused film festival which holds every year in Paris. I think they started in 2012 and this would be their 13th edition. This year, the festival held from the 7th of May to the 12th of May at the La Queen Theatre in Paris. So I decided to spend money I didn't have to buy a ticket to Paris so I could get a sneak peek at unreleased and usually obscure independent Nollywood productions so that I could, bring it to my YouTube as an exclusive so that myself can be forming like a professional critic. I arrived Paris on the 9th to this beautiful Charles de Gaulle airport. I really don't understand why French people have an S that is silent. And S is precisely the kind of letter that should certainly not be silent. I don't get it. Now, so this Charles de Gaulle airport gave me mad brutalist Soviet vibes. My eyes were just turning on their own because there was so much attention to detail in regard to the use of space and light and natural lighting. If you don't know anything about me, know this now. I love architecture and conscious design. It pleases me when I see spaces designed for living things and not like for animals like we design in Nigeria. I arrived on the third day of the 5 day event, so I had very little time to figure out where I was and get to the venue because my money could not waste. I arrived around 2 p.m. or so, and I pretty much got lost after I came down from the first train out of the airport because I couldn't figure out how to get to the connecting train. I ended up missing that second train, walking up and down. There are many, many stairs in the metro station, mistakenly leaving the station and then having to buy another ticket just to get back in. It paid me. Jeez. 13 euros or around 20 21K for a 30-minute trip, just gone like that. It was even a friendly family nearby that helped me understand the transport system while telling me sorry and shaking their head on my behalf. They will not shake it for you in Jesus' name. I ended up getting to my hotel, and holy hell, I have never seen such small elevators in my life. It felt like a bloody coffin, and I am skinny. If you big past me and you had a bag, you definitely have to use the stairs because how are couples even supposed to stay in this? Like, are they supposed to kiss all the way to the third floor or what? I dropped my bags, ignored my hunger because I'm not spending 10 euros on shawarma. 18 okay, because I've not seen meat and cabbage before. So I munched on some Oreos and managed to arrive at the venue just in time. Three movies were scheduled for the day. You can see them on screen. But I was really only interested in the Nigerian production, Trade by Bata, which was directed by Biodu Steven. So I settled in for the 6:30 p.m. show. I was particularly interested in this one because I remember that Biodu Steven wrote and directed Roses and Ivy, a movie which did not make much sense to me. So I was like, okay, so let's see what she has on the back burner. Now, before the movie proper, before some movie showings at this film festival, which basically this festival is taking place in a theater. Sometimes there are panels in the mornings, and then there are film showings in the evening. So you can network, between the film showings. But aside that, it's mostly just film showings. Now, before the movie proper, we were shown a short film as an appetizer, as happened with a lot of movies at this festival. The name was Ekun Yawo, a tale of a runaway bride. Now, this short follows a sick Balogun who needs his wife tears or something to get well. For some reason, even though it's a Yoruba language film, they didn't see it fit to subtitle it in English, only in French. So, unfortunately, I couldn't follow the words of the script, but I could follow the context clues and the story. This woman was forcibly married to a Balogun who fell sick and needed her tears to get well. The woman had not been keen on the marriage in the first place, and she was even already in love with some other person in the village. I mean, of course, as a general rule of thumb, dear young man or young person or whoever is watching, if you have to force someone to marry you, I think you can safely assume that they don't like you and will certainly not shed any tears if you swallow a glass cup or whatever. Just, as a rule of thumb. They finally forced the lady to give up a tear by having a friend shot dead in front of her, which was then given to the sick man, upon which he painfully dies. I'm not sure what happens, but either the Babalawo or maybe the Balogun's son then calls for her head in anger after the man dies. It turns out that she has already absconded the village with the village masquerade, who happened to be her lover. Or maybe her lover was just dressed as a masquerade so that they can escape later. I don't know, man. It was like watching something written by primary school students and shot on Snapchat. The couple take off to the river to join a canoe that may have been arranged, but then the canoe is not available anymore because the man is not there. The place is empty. The palace guards then catch up with them and shoot the lover dead, and then take the girl back to the village. And the end. I'm serious. That's like the end of the story. When this thing ended, I just sat there waiting for maybe a post-credit scene, because surely someone who had the opportunity to present their short film at a film festival would not have written this gibberish. I was at a loss to find the story in this thing, or the point. Like, where's the suspense? Where's the plot twist? The complication? The story? This was as one track a plot as you could get. It was just it felt more like the writer and director, Moses Ipadeola, just rented a camera and was eager to test it. This was not a short film, it was just a slice of life that happened to be captured by someone who had a camera in their hands. For me, it was I suffered secondhand embarrassment, because I just imagine that the guy had been there. Like, he would have been proud of this. I would have removed my name if I had been involved in this sort of childishness. I was reminded suddenly of a short film I saw here on YouTube from someone called Nora Awolowo. I'm guessing she's maybe a director or something. I don't know. In this film, the main character goes for a therapy session and then answers normal therapy questions about, what she wants to do with her life. And then after that, she goes to a beach and then decides what to do with her life. I remember waiting for the point of the story, and then the shot just ended. So confused, I went to the comment section to see if maybe the rest of the story or something was in the description. I don't know, man. I just didn't know what I was looking for. But then I saw that there were so many people congratulating her and crying tears of unblemished joy for some reason about the story. I was like, oh my God, I understood, I felt. I wanted to review it that day more out of shock, but then I just decided that this babe was probably just testing this camera, and I just cannot be associated with this level of averageness. And I just started this YouTube. Then I think it was after my first video, so I just decided to block that whole thing from my mind. So seeing this shot at the Nollywood Week in Paris just reminded me of that one. Okay, so enough about the shot. We are now off to the races with Trade by Bata, a comedy by Biondu Steven. Trade by Bata follows a somewhat common trope in Hollywood comedies, where two people from different lives sort of exchange identities but keep their original bodies, and then have to navigate life from a perspective that they hitherto had not really been exposed to. Our main character is an IG influencer just arrived in Nigeria from the US, and she tries to navigate her way to her village to see her grandmother and inform her of her pending marriage abroad. So here she runs into a local played by Mr. Macaroni, who was also on his way home. The two don't really get along, since Fifi, played by the very energetic Sholape Ogundimu, has a certain haughtiness and disdain about her for people in general, including even the grandmother that she came to see. A local girl, Abebi, played by Bukumi Adeaga Ilori, looking for a piece of the influencer lifestyle, then decides to attach herself to Fifi by fire by force, including doing all of this with a great deal of physical comedy that I sometimes wondered if the girl overdosed on white powder before the camera started rolling. Just watching her sometimes just made me feel physically tired, but not in a bad way. She was fantastic. Now, Fifi barely tolerates her, and in the course of events, we learn that Fifi is actually home to try and gain control of the trust fund, which her late father left to her grandmother, perhaps as executor also. Now, because Nigerian writers don't ever disappoint with their lack of knowledge, you will not be surprised to find that the writers don't know anything about how a trust fund works. So the whole thing is never explained. You can't fight to gain control of your own trust fund, because it's an independent entity that pays you returns or an allowance once you hit a certain age. At some point, the grandma, who is a very handsome woman, by the way, says the property, which property again was seized by the government. This is horse shit, because how is the trust fund seized by the government. What for? Not a single detail was given because the writers are just literate enough to write a story and know the word trust fund, but not intelligent enough to research the scaffolding of the said story. Sometimes they called it a property, other times it's a trust fund. See, you know what, let's just forget about it. For the purposes of this story, the late father might as well have left her a small bag of yam and indomie noodles. Fifi or Finyolua goes about joyfully being loud and disrespectful to everyone, including the boyfriend of Abebi, um, played by Mr. Macaroni. Until one day she tries to answer her grandmother one morning, only to find out that she is suddenly bereft of her English language skills and American accent. So she can now suddenly only speak Yoruba. As you can imagine, everyone panics. Now, on the other side of town, a baby wakes up to answer her father, only to find that she can no longer speak Yoruba, only American accented English. So, pandemonium ensues. By the end of the movie, lessons are learned in humility, and everybody learns to live in peace and love and stuff. Relationships are destroyed and new ones are formed. I mean, it's a romance movie ultimately, and I thought it was funny. I thought it was very nicely done. This was this movie's first showing premiere anywhere in the world, I think. And so, I'm not going to spoil it and go into all the nitty gritty of things. So I'll just give a general overview so that you can still enjoy it when it comes out on Prime or in cinemas or whatever. I personally thought it was great. Unfortunately, the near inability of the writers to research anything about how anything or how inheritance works almost spoiled it for me. But the movie had a lot of heart and funny moments. I've never seen this Bukimi lady before, but it appears that she has great chops for physical comedy. Always so jumpy and energetic. Biodu Steven, during the Q&A, actually happened to mention that the lady was a skit maker and comedian. I've never seen her before. I don't know who she is, but yeah, I loved her in the role. The lead actress, Sholape Ogundimu, was fantastic. She was also quite an on-screen presence. Like there were some scenes where the costume decisions were a bit confusing to me, so that it all happened in a way that I was impressed by her size. The girl is large. Her American accent was quite alright, and the switch to Yoruba was flawless. Now, it was sometimes inconsistent because sometimes she spoke in heavy Yoruba accented English while she was still in the purely Yoruba speaking phase. Now, I'm sure that it was just done for convention so that we could understand what she was saying or whatever. But it's all right. It's not a nitpick. Now, there's a scene in the movie where she was being all humble and she says something like, I just want to thank you people for taking care of me. And she said the line with so much passion that even the French people in the audience were like, oh, I loved it. It's my first time seeing the lady act, but I highly recommend seeing this movie when it comes out. Really nicely done. Abebi, the comedian, was great too. The moment her native Yoruba language skills just come rushing back, she shrieked something like, the English has expired, like call credit to the English has expired. She was just, all jumpy and stuff. It was really well done. And everyone just burst into laughter in the cinema. And I actually chuckled at that. I loved it. Towards the end of the Towards the end, the whole thing strayed briefly into African magic territory when they tried to include juju into the situation with some twists and turns. But the other parts were so good that I'm willing to forgive the writers. I mean, we still needed an explanation somehow now in it. After this movie, it turned out that Biodu Steven and the lady who plays grandma, who was giving very gentle sugar mommy vibes, were in the audience for some Q&A. As it turns out, the decision to make the lead actress Fifi a plus size woman was deliberate because Biodu wanted some plus size representation or something. So that was nice. And she thought about how it was difficult for them to find a good lead actress because she wanted someone who could do the American accent, speak Yoruba flawlessly, be plus size. So it took a while, and yeah, they got. I think I cannot stress how good of an actress Sholape is. Everyone was great in it, to be honest. The Igbo people in the audience, they loved it as the movie got a resounding round of applause from everyone present. As to my initial curiosity about, let me see what Beyonce Steven has written. It turns out that the movie was not written by Beyonce Steven, which was probably why it didn't frustrate me like Roses and Ivy did last year. By the way, you can watch my review of Roses and Ivy. I'll put the link in the description. She was only asked to direct this particular one, and I believe she did a pretty good job. On a closing note, take a look at this nice picture I took of Beyonce Steven and the fine grandma lady as they waited for, I'm guessing, their Uber in Paris. Now, that concludes my first day of 3 days at the Nollywood week in Paris, as they say. On day two, we had three movies, but I was really only interested in the Nigerian ones. Starting at 5:30 p.m. with Out in the Darkness, starring Kehinde Bankole, and The Weekend, directed by Daniel Oriahi, showing around 8. Now, just before noon, I had quickly Google mapped my way to the Notre Dame Cathedral because, like I said before, I love architecture, I love grand spaces, but I was very dismayed to see the long queue. I, I mean, there were like 500 people or something waiting in line, and I'm not about that life unless I'm trying to get into heaven. So I decided to walk around aimlessly in the satanic heat and just admire the buildings while my heavy power bank was just threatening to pull my trouser down. I tried to go to other places, but I kept missing trains, and sometimes I get lost and frustrated. The weird thing about the French is that they don't seem to, or maybe they're not interested in understanding context clues. Right? They don't speak English, a lot of them, but they also don't seem to understand universal sign language for things like frustration and direction. Omo, it's entire me. Oh. City of Love, my bumble. All right, then on to the next. Out in the Darkness is an examination of postpartum depression in mothers. If you don't know what that is, it's a mood disorder that is experienced by women after giving birth. Usually, this condition expresses itself through extreme sadness, low energy, anxiety, irritability, crying episodes, and in this movie, they centered a lot on the hallucinatory effects symptoms. Now, the movie features Bolu, played by Kehinde Bankole, struggling through the aforementioned symptoms as she tries her best to be there for her newborn. At some point, the frustration was so intense that it would just overtake her and then she just leave the baby, the care of the baby to her husband. Now, something that you need to know, number one, is that the movie is too long, and number two, the editing is rubbish. The editing was really bad. The time jumps are disconcerting, and at a point, a cut, in the timeline was so abrupt that people in the audience laughed because they thought it was a hallucination because of how weird it was. One moment she's beautifully dressed in the kitchen, joking with her daughter about how bad her father makes pancakes. The next, she's haggard looking, standing at the door. Somehow, we were now at breakfast the next day. So, was the last scene a dream? Why did she suddenly dress up to make breakfast? It was so weird and confusing. I really didn't like the color grading because it was a bit soft and cloudy. In the dark scenes, it looked like someone first spat on the camera lens before they started filming. Or maybe like there was a fog machine somewhere around the scene for some reason to set the mood. I don't know. But I was not a fan of the production. The film basically details her struggles through her postpartum depression and how over time her family did not maybe really see the signs, or they gave her too much leeway instead of taking her to a professional to get it diagnosed early. In this film too, her three friends tried to get her to hang out at some point, and I must tell you, I have rarely seen worse actors. It's like watching one Uche Montana interacting with two Uche Montanas. God, I felt secondhand embarrassment for everyone involved in the few scenes where they came up. It was so stilted, so cringy. Oh, just thinking about it now just makes my skin crawl. Could no one behind the camera? I kept wondering while I was watching it. Does Kehinde Bankole not realize that this girl is talking and acting rubbish, or I don't understand. The movie just, in general, feels very rushed. It has its good point, which was where I highlighted, which is where it highlighted what women go through, after a childbirth and how to spot the signs. But it had weak production value, so I was not really a fan. I'll keep the full review out for now, until the movie is released. Somewhere towards the end of the movie, it appears that the director, Sarah Kwaji, who is also the writer, forgot that they were shooting the movie and just started showing us what can, as far as I'm concerned, can only be described as a documentary, making this thing longer than it should be, which Bimbo Akitola said was in the movie. I don't know. Just something, I don't know how to explain it. It's like different parts of a puzzle that did not quite key in correctly, technically. It was so weird because towards the end we were watching psychiatric sessions, which wasted our time retelling the movie that we just already spent nearly 2 hours watching. What are you people doing? Bad things. Many things happened. Sha, lessons were learned, some lessons were not learned, but it was shot as if lessons were not learned, and I was left quite confused at the end. It's Sarah Kwaji's first feature film, and I think that both as writer and director, as well as being a professional producer, I think she was too close to the material to effectively zoom out in in her excitement to present a rarely covered part of the female experience to her audience. She was just too close to the material. Being writer and director, so you have her vision just wasn't there. I didn't really see it. In fact, during the Q&A session, the director mentioned that she was currently working on a documentary for women experiencing PPD, and I smiled at how awesome I was because I had literally used the word documentary in my head towards the end. So it was easy to see where she had gotten her wires crossed, right? So, you people are getting the best goddamn reviews ever on this channel. During the Q&A, the Oyibo people were crazy about, this stuff. They were asking about the babalawo in the movie and about churches and how they use traditional ways to deal with PPD. They asked about mental health, about how Nigerian women handled antenatal and postnatal care and all that stuff. White people are always so eager to ask about how something that you are showing them is drawn from your culture. Like, they can't just enjoy the thing. They'll have to be like, so which part of your culture or something? Almost like you cannot create anything without it having to come from some cultural thing. Many people were hung up about a certain tragedy in the movie, asking if it was necessary, that it was too gory or something. And some lady, a black American from the US, was was moaning about how the African experience she had missed because she's an African American and not a proper African.
Happy ending just was so unrealistic to me, and I was sitting here. I just want to share the emotion, thinking, "Damn, I hate that this is so unreal to me. That my world is like that would never be. That's just the reality of my culture, and unfortunately, as an African American. But I get the importance of."
It was interesting. The film was not really my cup of tea, but so you will see it when it comes out in cinema or on stream. Oh, and by the way, the founders of Nolly Critic and What Kept Me Up happened to be in the audience, and they heard my name when I asked a question after the weekend finished showing, and they came over, they introduced themselves, and commended my work because apparently they were fans. I was very pleasantly surprised. Thousands of miles from Nigeria, and two people recognized me because of a channel I started about a year ago, by the way. I actually use What Kept Me Up's calendar to keep track of upcoming Nollywood movies. That's how I know what movies to watch and when to watch them and when to do review. Like, this channel would not have much content at all if I didn't have a calendar to keep me in the loop of which dubious Yoruba epic Ibrahim Chata was going to scream next in. So you can attach the What Kept Me Up calendar to your Google calendar by joining the newsletter on their website. So, okay, now on to Daniel Oriahi's The Weekend. This one was quite a piece of work, headlined by Buchi Franklin, the very beautiful Gloria Anozie, who I haven't seen in the movie. I don't know, maybe 20 years, 15 years. I didn't even realize. Sorry, I think it's Gloria Anozie Young. So that means for me to have made that mistake, you know that I was watching her before she ever got married. So you see that I am an old man. And we also had Kepi Epeyong Bassi, a great actor who, honestly, I thought he never really reached his potential in Hollywood. I think he's a fantastic guy. I'd always liked him from childhood. This movie was sort of like a low level, like the horror, let's say horror thriller, something. It was produced by Trino Studios. The movie was awesome. Everyone was on point. The acting was fantastic. The tension was palpable, though the gore was mostly off camera. I think it's currently showing on Circuit TV. All right, so it's about some guy who is at odds with his family, but is convinced by his fiance to take them home for the weekend so that she will get to know them. We slowly come to learn that his family are actually a bunch of cannibals, and both hilarity and terror ensues. It has this sense of foreboding every few scenes. You just know that things are coming to a head. I liked it a lot. It also takes place in a couple of locations, but I recognize the main location as railway quarters in Ebute Metta and Lagos. I loved it a lot, even though I wasn't a fan of some of the ending, but I thought it was a fantastic movie. The interesting thing about my experience was that while writing the script for this review, oh, so you don't know that I have to write thousands of scripts for each review, Abby? I looked at my notes on my phone and I realized that I didn't make any notes for this movie. That's how intense it was. Like it was captivating. I highly recommend it. Love it. It's currently out now on Circuit TV. If you haven't, and if you like a bit of hardcore thriller and a little body horror, you would love this. The actors Kepi, Uzomaka, Aniuno, Buchi Franklin, Gloria Nozier, and Meg Otawa really understood the assignment. And I also happen to have just seen this same Meg today for the second time while I attempted to watch After 30, one rubbish movie that came up on Prime that doesn't make much sense to me. I don't even know. So for the Q&A session after this movie, the director was not around, but we had someone from the production studio, Trino Studios, like I've mentioned, who answered a bunch of questions on the inspiration and the production process for this particular movie. Apparently, it has already been shown in various festivals, over the last year or so. It has been nominated for some awards. It even won some. I like that they had to come up with a whole new language for the movie, which I thought was impressive because I had been thinking while watching it that it was shot in Ghana because I could not understand the language and it just did not sound like any Nigerian language that I'd ever heard. And sometimes you listen to a language and even though you've never heard it before, you can tell that, okay, this could be Nigerian. But that one, I was like, this just sounds like a Ghanaian thing. It was really nice. Someone in the audience asked about the budget and the producer said it cost about $500,000. Unfortunately, the movie did not make much money because this kind of movie is basically it's feeling like a niche and it's for people that are enthusiasts for this kind of thing. Uh, it had this feeling of being like an independent production with its own passion and swag, but it's not really like a mainstream cup of tea in Nigeria. So, yeah. The producer was asked if he was discouraged by the response, and he said that no, they will just continue making projects that they believe in, which was very nice because sometimes you just have to do things for the passion and for the culture, eh? All in all, the movie was very, very well received by everyone in the audience. I found it very charming, loved it. Now, even though I found this movie interesting, it was not the most interesting thing to happen to me that day because that night, while I was standing at the bus stop in Paris to go back to my hotel, two white girls ran up to me and they were all, meow, 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 meow. Meow. I'm like, sorry, English, please. And so they switched to perfect English. And so one of them told me that some guy had been following them in his car and pausing every few meters to stare at them, not saying anything. Like he was basically just stalking them. And this road was long, it was wide, and there was literally no one on the road I could see except me and these two girls. And I could also see the Jeep. So the girls were basically asking if they could stand beside me and just pretend like they know me, just so that the guy would stop bothering them. I said, oh, okay, yeah, sure. Now, because they saw a man or whatever to stand with, please tell me why the taller of the two women suddenly had mind to go and confront the guy in the Jeep while he was inside his Jeep. She was standing by the roadside and she began, talking to him and asking if he was an Uber and then started snapping at him. The man was asking them where they were going dressed like that and the girl was giving him lip and she was like, we are going to your funeral. What? Is an Uber?
He was like, oh no, I am an Uber. And I was like, you're an Uber? And he was like, yeah, for you. And I was like, no, I'm not taking an Uber. And he was like, no, you are. I was like, nah. Then he goes, where are you going? And I was like, what? And he goes, where are you going? And I was like, to a fucking funeral. And then he was like,
but no, he's not actually an Uber driver.
That's he crazy. He was like, where are you going? And I was like, a funeral. And he was like, funeral at night, just like that? Whose funeral? And I was like, yours. And then he was like, what? I was like, yeah. No. And I was like, it's not for us. And he was like, eh.
Wow. Sorry about that. Sorry about that.
No, it was funny.
It's not your fault.
And I then asked the other girl, did you guys call an Uber before or something? And she said no. So I'm not. So why the hell are you going to ask him if it's an Uber, Auntie? Please, oh, my black leather jacket is not the armor of God. If the guy comes down and just pisses you people and put you inside hand luggage, me, I say I'll just run away. On a more serious note, it was a pretty sad thing, all taken together, because it just shows that men has come everywhere in the world. There was something she said where she was like, we need a man to stand by, and it just made me feel a bit sad. Like no matter where you are, wherever you are in the world, women will always be giving the short end of the stick. That was just it was crazy to me. I've read of stuff like this on Twitter, but this is the first time I was experiencing it. So I actually stood there with them until the man, he actually paused and was just looking at us there. So I just asked them to stop looking at him, and we were just talking together, and then he drove off. This was around like 12:30 a.m. Crazy. We ended up getting, on the same bus together. Oh yeah, and by the way, while all this stuff was happening, as a Nigeria guy, the first thing that occurred to me was that this was a scammers. So the very first thing I did was to begin to record on my phone, because I honestly don't want to have to learn French from inside a police cell in Paris, please. So I just recorded the encounter, while keeping my phone down, just in case somebody would come up with some funny story about what happened. And I will suddenly go from savior to, threat. All right, then. I think that would be all for this part of the review. You can engage with me in the comments, and I'll probably do the second part because we have one more day left. And strangely enough, the most interesting movie from the Nollywood week. All right, then. See you on the next one. This is already too long. Wow. Damn.